All right, good evening. This is in response to Isaiah. Isaiah asked me, I'm very interested in this esoteric style of karate that I know. And the truth is, I know there are two styles of karate I know that are very esoteric. There's a style that I had sort of a surface understanding growing up, a couple years. I got an orange belt in it, but to be honest with you, that orange belt, there are people I know that started around the same time I did in other schools, and they had black belts. You could get it in 2 years in some of the Tang Sudo places. And our standard was fairly high in Hamilton for things like Tang Sudo and Taekwondo, so I want to mention that. But anyway, and if you want to know about that, go on the web, look up Dennis Dwyer, look up The Way of the Sphere, Sphere. I know some of my pronunciation was off, and it sounded like I was saying spear, Spear, but it's Sphere. That's important, The Way of the Sphere. And try to contact him. I think he still has a web page, and he's, I would say, no spring chicken. He started martial arts sometime in the mid early 60s. So while he's alive, get that knowledge, get that information. I don't know anyone else that is actively teaching that style. Rick Hahn, Rick's no young man either, and he's had some family tragedies. I don't know. I know they sold that school to someone. The people that wound up buying that school are no longer teaching there. There were other black belts. I think a gentleman named Blaine Elmer, who I think passed away along with his son, Bob Diddock. I don't know what happened to him. He may still be floating around somewhere in the area. Last time I heard, he was teaching at the Hamilton Y, and he was calling what he did Taekwondo, and it's nothing like Taekwondo. So I have no idea what's going on there. If he would do that to the name of his style, I don't know if it's the same style. And there was a gentleman named Rich Bracconi who claims to be like a spirit medium now, and if he's still teaching, I just don't know if I trust his judgment, to be honest with you. Some of the things he said online and on his webpage just rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, I think he's gone a little bit crazy. So go look up Dennis Dwyer if you want to know more about The Way of the Sphere. Now, another esoteric karate style is Goju Daote Karate Do. That's what it was called when I was learning it. At one point, Jeff added a suffix Goju Daote Taekwondo because there were Taekwondo elements in it, but I personally never adopted that name. It's just way too many arts pasted together for my taste. One bridge too far. Also, the Taekwondo elements in it are muted, let's just say. So I'm going to give you a fairly detailed description of that style, Isaiah, simply because you're the first one to ask. So first of all, The Way of the Sphere was an influence in the Daote style. Daote is what Mike Bronston did. Mike Bronston was a student of Rick Hahn, and not Rick Hahn, excuse me. Rick Hahn and him were peers. They got their black belts, under the same teacher, and they were both third-degree black belts under Dennis Dwyer. And that is the highest rank he ever promoted anyone here to. So Jeff trained under Mike until Mike stopped teaching. Then Jeff took over the YMCA program. Jeff was also a brown belt in Goju Ryu, and he had also trained in high school under Jose Gonzalez, my friend. And Jose Gonzalez's system is Nippon Kudo Shudokan, right? So Jeff had many influences, but I think, honestly, the longest he ever trained was probably under Mike. Mike folded, and he took over the YMCA program. He had a green belt with Mike and a brown belt in Goju Ryu, USA Goju, under Phil Holder, who taught in this region. Jeff, again, his green belt under Mike, that's like a 5-6 year commitment to get that. Okay, it was not, Mike didn't give out ranks, and Rick Hahn didn't give out ranks. The Way of the Sphere was generally a style that took a long time to master. Even if you had all the elements, they felt you just had to put the time in, you had to put the reps in. So he took over that YMCA program, and he says, I need to get a black belt in something. So Jeff, while working full-time, while teaching at 2 YMCAs and a gymnastics center, while creating his style, said, I need some legitimate rank on me. So he joined Kim's Karate, because he lived in Pennsylvania, but commuted to New Jersey to do all of his teaching and training. Kim's Karate was a national chain. I think they may still be around. I'm not sure. Jay Kim was the master, and Jeff then worked his way up to black belt in that system. And he was also training under a guy named Jeff Wisher, who was, at the time, I think in his late 30s or maybe 40. And it's kind of funny because Jeff described him as, he's like 40 years old, black guy, got a pot belly, right? I met Jeff Wisher. Like, he said so much crap about Jeff Wisher, I'm like, he must just be making it up. But when I met Jeff Wisher, I'm like, he looked like Herschel Walker, okay? The man was a big football player type guy, and he would just do like something like this, and everything he did would just look so profound. It would look like there was so much skill and energy and precision in his movements. I've never met anyone that could impress me just by going like that. But the way his body moved and everything, I'm like, this is the real deal. I'm like, okay, Jeff Wisher is real. He's not some kind of legend that Jeff uses to give his Goju legitimacy. So he was also training Goju at the same time he was training Taekwondo. And, that's how Goju Daute Karate Do got started. And I was a sophomore in high school, and I had my Shotokan training, and I had been training at home literally for like 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and sparring with friends and everything. And my whole freshman year, me and my friend Scott, we trained and sparred every single day after school. And I went to the YMCA, and I'd actually watched Mike Bronston's class and was so impressed. I'm like, I got to train with this guy next semester. And Mike closed down. Jeff was there, and I'm like, all right, well, first day there, Jeff said, let me see you do some stuff. I did, I think, Heian Shodan, and I did some kicks, and he goes, you got really good kicks, man. You got really, good forms. He said, I'll make you a deal. You help me by handing out flyers and help me out with the kids, and you can train here for free. I was like, great, where do I sign? And so I became an apprentice to someone who was, by my level, a master, because I was not a master. And Jeff, had various martial arts backgrounds, and he was forming his own style. He was on the move, he was on the go, he was training with people, and I was his apprentice. And so as the system was taking shape, I was the experimental lab rat. I remember early on that we were learning a lot of throws and sweeps, and he phased them out because it scared people away. But I would say of all his students, I'm the only one that got the throws and everything early on, and the sweeps. And he just stopped teaching them at one point. The Way of the Sphere influence with the flow training and everything, both of us had that, and I was really into it. And he de-emphasized it. He's like, it's complicated, and he was really angry at Mike for just quitting teaching overnight. And so he, there are aspects of that system he didn't really teach out or practice anymore out of anger, but I saw a value in them, and I continued to practice them and try to implement them. And I also sought out training at the American Karate Academy under Rick Hahn, because I was so impressed with what Mike did, and it was so different than anything else I'd ever seen. So I was training with Jeff, I was apprenticing with him, and not paying him, and I was paying to go to the American Karate Institute, and they were not that expensive. We're talking 1985, and it was about $55 a month. So yeah, it wasn't super cheap for me, but I got a paper route or something, and later on I worked at Mickey D's. I found a way to make it work. My parents certainly weren't paying for my martial art training. So time moves on, and I went in the Marine Corps. I came back. I worked for Jeff full time, and I left for the Marine Corps a brown belt in Goju Karate Do, and I had some Jeet Kune Do. I'd had a lot of the Way of the Sphere, and I'd had a lot of sparring and practicing with friends in my spare time. I was just a martial arts geek, right? I went in the Marine Corps, and when I got out, I had a black belt in the ATA. I had cross-trained with everything I could find in the Marines with other Marines. I'd sparred with all kinds of guys. I'd wrestled with guys that did freestyle and Greco-Roman, got my butt handed to me, right? I'd done the military Marine Corps system at the time was called LINE, which was an acronym that I can't fully remember what all the words mean right now off the top of my head. I had cross-trained in Shito Ryu for a couple months. When I was stationed briefly on a deployment in New Hampshire for 2 months, I did a Kenpo system called Bob Meserve's Kenpo. But throughout the whole time, I was practicing my Goju Daute forms, and I was practicing my ATA forms because I was training that on base for damn near nothing. And then, when I got out, I got into Kung Fu, and I loved Kung Fu, and I remained in love with Kung Fu and Filipino martial arts. And Goju Daute, by the way, has stick form and stick techniques. I remember being the guy that Jeff would get to demonstrate both the stick form and stick techniques in public at things like 4-H fairs and stuff. I was also a big-time demo guy. I represented him in tournaments. I did forms. I did fighting. Not much weapons forms because I only knew the stick, and it wasn't a very beautiful form competitively. So throughout my entire life, I've never stopped practicing Goju Daute Karate Do. I eventually got my 4th Dan in it, and my 4th Dan test was supposed to be 3 rounds full contact with the late Ed Youngsa, who was at the time nationally rated tournament fighter. And he'd fought Taekwondo, continuous rules, all types of point rules. And we were supposed to be 3 rounds, but I'm not trying to brag here, but we did 1 round, and we started another round. And the round terminated before the full 2 minutes was up, and Ed was unable or unwilling to continue, but he signed my certificate. Okay, I earned that 4th degree. I fought him with everything I had, and I gave as good as I got, and he was the one that was unwilling, let's say, to continue, and I was willing to continue. So what is this system? The system, first of all, Jeff always said he's a stickler for forms, and the forms he created were his unique invention, and I actually played a role in some of the way the original forms were, because he would be like, try this, no, try this, okay, now we're going to do it this way, and I'd be like, well, what about this, Jeff? Jeff, if we do it this way, students this isn't going to make sense to the students, but this will. So he called it the American Okinawan system, but our kicks, we liked our high kicks. Right? You didn't have to throw high kicks, but I always threw the kicks as high as possible, as fast as possible, as hard as possible. There were 4 basic empty hand kata that were Jeff's compilation, and he called them Mercer kata because we were from Mercer County College, but the system was the Golden Eagle system, and I have always called them the Golden Eagle katas. Golden Eagles 1, 2, 3, and 4. Trademarks of this, it's a very even balance of punches and kicks. For a system that's heavily weighted towards Okinawan technique, we had a lot more kicks. and that was the Taekwondo influence. That's also the Hamilton Township influence, because in Hamilton Township there was just a lot of kickers, and a lot of Tung Sudo people and Taekwondo people and the Shotokan people could all kick high and preferred to. And so, we practiced a lot of kicks. The forms had lots of reverse punches, knife hands, palm strikes, kakeyuke, grabbing technique, knee smashes, elbow smashes, combinations of regular back fist and this type of back fist, some leopard fists, right? So, and they were even the basic Mursa kata one was a very complicated kata. I was always troubled teaching it to white belts. I'm like, maybe we should teach like some of the Heian forms or something first, or Taikyoku forms, because it was a bitch teaching the forms. And number 4 was a very complicated form, remains a complicated form. In my personal practice, now that Jeff is gone, Ed is dead, and every other black belt in the system has, dropped out of training or whatnot. I remember Jeff had like 3 schools at one point. They were very successful. And Ed's school, EY Martial Arts, was successful for over maybe 25 years. And it was a kind of a branch off of that. But I've moved things around and changed them in line with my logic and my experience. And although I still practice most of those kicks high, my side kicks I throw to the body, a high side kick to the face just doesn't make sense most of the time, right? And I'm not getting any younger, all right? So, and I've noticed that it really helps if you teach 1 or 2 sort of basic Taikyoku forms before you go into that. Now, then you have the circle pattern forms. Originally, I had learned 3 from Jeff. And the circle pattern forms are in an X. You go to this angle, then this angle, then this angle, then this angle, and you repeat. And you repeat this on the left and this on the right. And one of the big features is, especially in the first one, there is no movement of your right foot. You're pivoting off of it or on it, from a left to a right lead, from at different angles. Number 1 was all hand techniques, blocks and punch, block punch, right? So-called block and punch. Number 2 was all kicks, and it was a doozy. At my age, I cannot physically execute that form the way it was executed when I was a young kid, and Jeff couldn't do it after a while. And what I have done with the system is I've taken number 2, the kicking form. I've created one version where you're planted and you step and slide and kick and turn and step and slide and kick, and you're doing single kicks and ending with a combination of 3 kicks to each side. And then the second version is the double kicks, because originally you would start off 45-degree angle, low side kick, high side kick, hop off of it, low side kick, high side kick, hop off of it, low hook kick, high roundhouse kick, and just an extremely difficult form to do if you're a young teenager or an athletic 25-year-old. Many people dropped out when that became one of their belt test requirements. So what I've done is I've done a A version and a B version, and in the B version, the first kick is low to the shin, and the second kick need be no higher than the body, and there is a jumping crane kick combination, which I've retained, but I've also developed age-appropriate executions of it. So if you're young, you can go full jump. If you're older or have knee problems, then it's more like a scissor kick. You don't necessarily have to kick high, or you can kick, put the leg down, kick. The idea is I've made the style so that you can practice it all your life, and modifications of kicks and certain techniques, so that it is a lifelong activity. Jeff was really into tournaments. So it's at one point I came back on leave from the Marine Corps, and he taught me the beginning of Circle Pattern 4. When I came back, he'd modified that. I have developed my own version of Circle Pattern 4. We also practice Sanchin, Tensho, a stick form, a staff form based on Mursa Kata 1 or Golden Eagle 1, and a double nunchaku kata that used the footwork patterns of Golden Eagle 1, but much more intricate handwork. We did lots of work on tournament sparring. We were heavy into back fist, reverse punch, back fist, roundhouse kick. We did a lot of ridge hands, a lot of grab and punch. We eliminated the sweeps and throws, but I didn't. We did a lot of knife hand and palm work. We had about 15, and it later expanded to about 20 required one-step techniques. We had a form of three-step sparring, which was more like semi-free sparring, where one person would attack you 3 times, and then you defend and you go back and forth. And that just got you used to moving, and then we would introduce, front hand only sparring, front leg only sparring, and then front leg, front hand, and then hands only sparring, legs only sparring, full sparring, continuous sparring. I even did some full contact sparring and PKA style training, and had an unofficial kind of like a smoker match where I broke someone's nose. This was all in the 80s. And then later, after I came back from the military, the 90s, and then I, kept it up and tested with Ed Youngsa for my other ranks in the early 2000s, with my last test being 2003. Currently, what I've done is I have added grappling elements to it. I have added much more weaponry. I have added the sai, the tonfa, the kama, double short stick. I've taken the stick form and I've made it much more complicated, much more in line with Filipino martial arts, and ambidextrous. Okay? This style is a viable style, and I have spent my life keeping it, retaining it, and refining it, even though my main style is Kung Fu, because it is a style I'm a master of by any standard, and I do not want it to die. And quite frankly, if I opened my own studio tomorrow and had the place flooded with students, it would be one of the styles offered there as well as the Kung Fu. I would have separate curriculums. But if anybody is interested in the style, you have to come to me. I'm more than willing to teach it out. I'm not a man of great wealth and great means, so you have to facilitate it. You either have to come to me or cover my expenses, my travel, and pay me for my time so I can come to you. I don't really care. To be quite frank with you, I think highly of the style. I think highly of many of the principles in it, and I think it has a lot to contribute to any martial artist and to the world, as does my southern style, Jin Chuan Dao, of Kung Fu, which has elements of southern style Kung Fu, Wing Chun, and of course modern combat. So that's where I stand, Isaiah. Again, I don't know anything about you. I don't know if you train or not, or if you trained in the past, or what. But you asked me a legitimate question, and I, in a way that I don't object to answering. So, in this world heavily geared towards MMA, Muay Thai, and BJJ, I went down and I sought all those things. So any school I established, if I was teaching pure Kung Fu, if I was teaching pure Karate, or any synthesis of that, the BJJ that I've learned, the kickboxing I've learned, the boxing I've learned, the different street fighting martial arts, certainly the Filipino martial arts, certainly Silat, all of that would influence it and guide it. I believe in mastering core elements of a style, maintaining core elements and principles throughout your life, and then gleefully and joyfully go out there and cross-train. See what there is, come back to your style, see what's compatible, what isn't. Oftentimes cross-training, if you go back to a legitimate style that you trained, with real pressure, it strengthens what you know and reinforces the correctness. You're like, this is actually a principle I've had in my style that I was unaware of. But I had to go have it explained to me a different way to understand it. Okay, my friends? I love the martial arts, and they've loved me back often. They've also been cruel to me sometimes, right? But it is my life, and I want to walk as a warrior all the days of my life, but I want to be a warrior for justice, not for injustice. I want to maintain what I have and possibly gain better skill, better health, better physicality, even at my age. One never knows. Wherever you are, whoever you are out there, there's no reason to stop training. There's no reason to stop trying. I've met people in wheelchairs that started training and accomplished things that they never thought they were, like getting out of the wheelchair. All right? So, okay, Isaiah, I've given you my story, and hey, if you want to be courteous, give me a little bit of your backstory too. All right, man, have a good day.